The priest, the true embodiment of the light. Or are they? Well, let's find out today in our Priest TBC class guide. Let's dive into it. Just before we begin, I would like to thank you guys for fantastic feedback in terms of what class you wanted to see next. You guys voted out way more than I thought that you would, and that is why we are doing Priest today. I'll be doing another vote at the time of release for this video, so you can pick the next class guide that you want. But for today, let's dive into Priest. So in today's video, we will be discussing talents, rotations and abilities, stat priorities, how to level to 70, and any additional class specific points that I am able to think of for the Priest. But we're not going to be discussing racials, professions or PvP. This is simply because I am writing this from the perspective of someone who's moving a character of level 60 from Classic to TBC Classic, if that is the way that delivery will be commenced. So racials will already be set in stone from the leveling that you've done. Professions, not quite so much, but still something you're going to have pre-leveled most likely. And PvP, on the other hand, is something I'm not going to be discussing because TBC PvP is not something that I'm particularly familiar with, so I wouldn't like to pretend that I had the knowledge base to be able to make a guide on it. But with that being said, let's dive into talents for the Priest. Okay, so the first build that we're going to look at is going to be a holy build that is designed around the sort of first end game things that you're going to meet. This is going to start at level 60, and it's going to have a lot of potential for variance depending on your playstyle and what it is that you're doing. So I filled the talent tree out here with the talents that you're going to want at level 60 going into TBC. So we'll have a quick glance over them for you. You're always going to want to take Holy Specialization, and you're always going to want to take Divine Fury. These are bread and butter for the class. After that, there's some play. I've gone for Inspiration and 2 points into Renew, before progressing down into Improved Heal, Holy Reach, down to Spiritual Guidance, Spirit of Redemption, Spiritual Healing here, Holy Concentration. Now there is only the 3 points that you're going to want on this row because it's kind of rubbish, so this is the point where you've gone back and got some Improved Renew. You're going to then have Empowered Healing, and then Circle of Healing, your new bottom talent in the Holy Tree. Circle of Healing works pretty much as you would expect if you're familiar with it from retail, being an instant cast spell that heals the target and its party members that are within range for X amount. Now, at this point, I've moved over into the Discipline tree, but like I said, there is a lot of play in these talents. So, for example, if you were doing a PvP build, you are going to want some of these other talents that are avoiding interruption while casting and things of that nature, or maybe even the free smite chance from spell critical hits. So there are a lot of talents that are worth picking up, but a lot of the ones that we've missed are either generally bad or are ones that are more PvP oriented, but if they want to incorporate them in their build, there is a lot of flex here. Moving over into Discipline for your leftover talents, you're going to want to take 5 points in Unbreakable Will. You could have 5 points in one specialization if you really wanted, if say if you were using this while leveling, but Unbreakable Will is going to see you a lot better value most of the time. You're then going to pick up 2 points in Improved Power Word Fortitude, and 3 points into Improved Power Word Shield. Now that is all the points that you're going to have available to you at level 60. From here you are going to want to progress further into the Discipline build, so you're going to have 3 points in Meditation, allowing your mana regen to continue while casting, 1 point into Inner Focus, and then you do have a point here that's somewhat to waste. You could go either reducing the mana cost or reducing your threat generation. It's entirely up to you. I'll click into our threat generation here just for the sake of the argument of what we're making. After that point, we're going to go for 5 into Mental Agility. Now that's going to reduce the mana cost of your instant cast spells, so your Power Word Shield, your Renew, things like that, by 10%, which is pretty fantastic on every cast. And then that's it, you're at level 70. Now, this is one of many holy builds that you can go for. There is, like I say, a massive amount of variance, as you will see when we look at the Discipline build. And there is also the potential in TBC for a lot of hybrid builds. I'm not going to show them today, but we will talk over all of the talents, so obviously you can make your own mind up about making your own hybrid build from there. So next up we're going to talk about Disc, and Disc is going to have a lot of variance in it, just the same as we did with our Holy build. But the build that I see most commonly going for is one that consists of Unbreakable Will, simply because the top row talents are kind of rubbish. Then you're going to progress down and get 3 points into Improved Power Word Shield, 2 points into Power Word Fortitude, 5 into Silent Resolve, 3 Meditation, 1 Inner Focus, 2 out of 3 in Absolution, 5 in Mental Agility, Divine Spirit, 2 in Improved Divine Spirit, 5 in mental strength, 1 in power infusion, 5 in enlightenment, and 1 in pain suppression, your new bottom talent. Now, there is a lot of play in your choices here. The only ones I'd say you're really going to want are these bottom 3, your Divine Spirit and Improved Divine Spirit, and all of the talents, of course, that relate to it. If you wanted to skip out on mental agility, you can, or if you want to take some of the points out of Silent Resolve to put them into something else, then you're welcome to do so, but there is not really a lot that improves healing in this tree when you're working your way down, so you're pretty much going to take everything that's healing based and then progress over into the Holy Tree. Now, in the Holy Tree, again, we're going to take 5 points in Holy Specialization for our improved critical strike chance, and 5 points into Spell Warding. Now, you can take the 5 points out of Spell Warding if you like, and go for the Improve, Renew, and Healing Focus. It's really a personal preference, depending on what content you're doing, but these taunts are going to round you out to level 60. Now, from 60, moving on to 70, you're going to take 3 points into Inspiration. You are then going to take 2 points into Improve Renew and 2 points into Holy Reach, at which point then you are going to go into Improved Healing. Now that is going to round you out to level 70. Like I say, there is a lot of variance here, so you can play around with this build if you'd like. It's not as set in stone as some other classes are. And finally, we're going to talk about Shadow. Now Shadow, there is a good chance that this is the spec you're going to be using for leveling. And as a result, we are going to look at a few of the leveling talents. Most notably, the reason I bring that up is going to be in your top row of talents. Spirit Tap or Blackout, both really are going to work very well as leveling talents, but not fantastic outside of that. It pretty much comes down to personal preference. Whichever one you go for, you're probably going to want to put 5 points in whichever one. Or I suppose you could have a mixture if you'd like. But they're not going to see you much good in most endgame content anyway. I probably would go for the stun capabilities of Blackout in endgame, which is why I've put it in the build here. From there, we're going to have 5 points in Shadow Focus, 2 in Improved Shadow Weapon, 3 in Shadow Affinity, 5 in Improved Mind Blast, 1 in Mind Flare, a point in Shadow Weaving. It's very important that you keep at least 1 point in Shadow Weaving because the debuff is incredibly useful. But if you want to put more points in there and you find them from elsewhere, then that's absolutely fine too. 2 points into Shadow Reach, 1 into Vampiric Embrace, 2 into Improved Vampiric Embrace, 3 into Focus Mind, 5 for Darkness, 5 for Shadow Power, 1 for Shadow Form, 5 for Misery, and 1 for Vampiric Touch. From there you'll pop 4 points into Unbreakable Will in the Discipline tree, and that is what you'll be able to start with at level 60. Now, there is some play in the talents here. For example, I have seen people drop Improved Mind Blast points for Shadow Weaving. I don't personally recommend this, but it is something that some people do. And you can also go down a route that is Improved Psychic Scream and Silence if you're going to be doing something where that extra crowd control is going to be helpful. But the more difficult point is that you're going to be having to drop in points from somewhere else, and all of these talents are fantastic really. The only one is this top tier where you've really got the points to spare, but of course with it being top tier you have to put 5 points in somewhere to be able to get down to the next tier, so you are kind of locked into that. From there, the 4 points that we put into Discipline are somewhat variable, whether you want to go one spec in case you run out of mana, or if you'd rather go for the chance to resist CC. CC, if you're playing correctly, is the more likely to be useful, which is why I put our points into there. But of course this is the level 60 version, this is what you're going to see when you start the TBC content. We are still going to have some points left over, so what we're going to do, we're going to go into Unbreakable Will. We're going to have 2 points in Improved Power Word Fortitude, 3 in Power Word Shield, to get us down to the talents that we actually want in this tree: Meditation and Inner Focus. Now, there is an argument to be made that you could drop some points from Meditation or Inner Focus, usually Meditation, to pick up extra points in the Shadow tree if you need them. So say for example Improved Shadow Weaving if you wanted more points on it. Personally, I think the mana regen is far more important, and having the ability to reduce the mana of your next spell and get a crit on it every 3 minutes is a lovely talent to have in Inner Focus as well. So if there is something that you want to make a change here, always with these talent trees there is always the potential for some variance, but this is the talent tree that you're most commonly going to be able to see, or some very close variant thereof, in order to get the best out of your Shadow Priest. So next up, we're going to be talking about the abilities that you're going to be using while healing in either Holy or Discipline spec, or any combination therefore of the two. Now, healing, unlike DPS, has historically always been something with more of a priority system or what spells you use where, as opposed to a straight up rotation. And that's no different with the priest in TBC, so we're going to have a quick rundown of what you see on screen here. So, put simply, your single target healing priority is going to be Greater Heal, then Power Word Shield, Renew, Heal, and Flash Heal. Now, Greater Heal is going to be your bread and butter, particularly lower ranks. Then you're going to move into your Power Word Shield and Renew that can be used sort of interchangeably dependent upon the situation and what talents specifically you've gone for. Then you're going to be using Heal very situationally and Flash Heal pretty much only when it's the last resort to stop somebody from dying. When it comes to AoE healing priority, you're going to be looking at your Circle of Healing as your number one choice. Obviously, if you don't have that, if you are disciplined, then that is not going to be an option for you, at which point you'd move on to Prayer of Mending and Prayer of Healing respectively, depending on the situation. Now, that's going to cover it for your basic spells that are actually going to do your healing, but as well as that, of course, we do have your cooldowns. Now, your cooldowns are a little bit more simple to understand. You're going to be using Pain Suppression on targets that are being focused by a hard-hitting ability, or on the tank if he's taking an absolute pummeling. You're going to have your Power Infusion, which you're probably going to be using at the same point, but on yourself to increase your healing output. You are going to have Inner Focus, which you are going to want to use for when you want a large chance of a critical heal, but most importantly on a spell that would otherwise cost a massive amount of mana. And you're going to have your Shadow Fiend, which is going to be used for mana regen, and as such should be used when you are roughly 50% mana or lower. That is going to about cover it for healing as a understanding, but do bear in mind that this will take some getting used to when you actually put it into practice. Now next up we're going to have Shadow. Now Shadow is actually not the most complicated DPS spec out there, and it basically falls into a priority system. You are going to want to maintain both of your Vampiric Touch and your Shadow Word Pain on targets at all times. If you are fighting multiple targets, keeping these up on multiple targets will be your highest priority. After which you will use Mind Blast on cooldown, Shadow Word Death when it is available, and Mind Flare the rest of the time. Now, one big problem with Shadow Priests has always been that their mana has been a big issue for them. If you are undergeared or you're simply having mana pumps for any given reason, dropping Mind Blast and or Shadow Word Death from the rotation is the primary way of being able to increase your mana while still maintaining a high damage output. In terms of your cooldowns, you will have access to Inner Focus, which you are going to want to use with Shadow Word Pain, as this is your highest mana cost ability, and you are going to want to use Shadow Word Fiend for mana regen just the same as you would in any of your healing specs. Now next up we have our stat priority. Now your stat priority when healing, regardless of spec that you have gone for, is the same, so that does make this somewhat more simple to understand. But unfortunately it isn't as simple as it looks, and I'll explain. So the priority system you see on screen here is Intellect and Spirit at equal value, then Bonus Healing, then MP5, then Crit, and then Haste. Now this is true almost all of the time, but depending on the content that you're doing, you may require more of one stat than the other. So for example, in fights that are somewhat bursty with high damage output, but the fight itself doesn't go on for a particularly long period of time, Bonus Healing is going to be much more beneficial to you. In fights where a large mana pool and the sustain is going to be more helpful on that mana, then of course things like Intellect to improve your maximum mana pool, the Spirit and the MP5 are going to have a lot more value as well. Now, when it comes to Crit and Haste, they are pretty much always going to be after the rest of the stats, and in the order they are listed. Crit is going to be much more important than Haste for you because of the ability for it to interact with the synergies of your talents. Moving on to Shadow, we are going to first be looking to get to Spell Hit Cap. Now Spell Hit Cap for raiding is 17%. This isn't accounting for the 3% that you will be able to get from talents if you have picked that talent in the tree, which is highly recommended. If so, you would only need to get down to 14% from gear. After you've got your spell hit, you'll be looking for spell power, then you'll be looking for spell crit and spell haste, followed by intellect, spirit, MP5 and stamina. Now stamina is only listed here simply because you will want enough to be able to survive abilities that are going to hit you, but it really is of very little importance in actual gameplay. Beyond that, everything else is just going to improve either your throughput or your mana regen, and as such you can follow this pretty much to the T in regards to your priorities. When it comes to spell hit, however, it should be noted that trying to get spell hit cap very early on could be quite challenging, so if you aren't spell hit capped, don't try and lose all of the stats to hit that hit cap, not until you actually enter into raids, because of course in dungeons and heroics and things of that nature, the chance to hit is considerably higher, and as a result you won't need to get that hit cap until you set foot into raids. Now finally we are going to discuss the journey to 70. Now this is going to be the same with every single class, and it is that we are going to recommend that you do the journey from 60 to 70 inside of dungeons. Now, as well as the obvious benefits of doing the dungeons, which are going to be such as gearing is going to be considerably easier for you and not having to compete for mobs when questing in the early days of the expansion, you are also going to find that you are getting a considerable amount of reputation from doing the dungeons. Now, this reputation is not only valuable because of the rewards that you get, but also because when you achieve max level, reputation grinding is going to be a very large part of what you are going to need to do to gain access to the raids for the attunements. Now I'm going to pop up on the screen for you now the attunement map for the early days of TBC, followed by another version of the map which is highlighting all of the sections you are able to complete on your way to 70 simply by doing the rep grinds from completing the dungeons, and as you can see it's quite a substantial amount of it, and that is why it's recommended to do dungeons over leveling through questing. Now beyond the aforementioned achievements that you're going to want to do, I did also allude to the fact that these reputations are going to be fantastic for gearing your characters out, and this is going to be true of every class. However, it is worth noting that on Priest you're actually going to get a very substantial amount of items that you can be able to achieve through simply getting these reps completed themselves. So I'm going to throw up on the screen just a few that I picked out for you now. And as you can see, there is quite an array there in terms of the level ranges that they are available for, what spec they'll be useful for, and what slots on your character screen they will be able to fill. This alone is going to make it worthwhile doing the dungeons to level as opposed to leveling through questing, because of course the reputations, as we've alluded to in the past, are considerably easier to grind out if you do the early stages of them through the dungeon version of the grind. If you were to quest early on, then these dungeons, when you are completing them, will not give reputation. If you are to do the dungeons and get the reputation first, you'll still have access to the quest to do at a later date, resulting in reputation gains at a higher standing than what you can do in the normal mode of the dungeons, as you can do the quest reputations all the way to Exalted, as well as if you wait until level 70 to do the quest, you will also get a substantial amount of gold for the quest completion. But that's going to about do it for this class guide. If there's anything that I've missed or anything you're unsure of, please do feel free to ask me down in the comments below. If you have liked the video, or if you're waiting on another class, then please do consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. But for now guys, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Later.